Welcome back to the deep dive. We've got a really fascinating collection of footage and analysis you sent over. It all details this recent wave of Ukrainian deep strikes, mostly hitting high-value Russian assets in Crimea.
That's right. And what's really remarkable here, I think, isn't just the number of strikes, but the sheer diversity of the targets. I mean, the significance of what they're hitting it's pretty high.
Right. So our mission for this deep dive is to synthesize all this footage, really unpack it, and understand the weapon they're using, this FP1 attack drone, and maybe more importantly, why hitting these specific systems feels like a real turning point.
Exactly. This isn't just about harassment anymore.
No, this looks like systematic degradation. When you look at the list, they're hitting air defense, electronic warfare systems, critical recon assets.
Even grounded aircraft.
Exactly. They're not just poking holes. It feels like they're trying to sever the nervous system of Russia's entire Crimean operation.
Precisely. And that's a strategic evolution. Early on, a lot of drone strikes were focused on what we call seed suppression of enemy air defenses.
So just taking out the missile launchers or the most obvious radar.
Right. But what these sources show us is it's much broader now, it's more opportunistic, and it seems highly optimized to just maximize the economic cost and the functional disruption for Russia.
Okay, so let's get into that.
Yeah.
Let's start with the tool that's making it all possible, the FP1 drone. The sources are suggesting this is becoming Ukraine's go-to for these deep strikes.
Oh, it's
Fine.
fundamental. Absolutely. Wow. The report has this one statistic that it grounds the whole analysis, really.
Yeah.
These drones now account for over 60% of Ukraine's long-range strike attacks.
60%. Wow. I mean, that moves it from an innovative, interesting capability to
a fundamental pillar of their whole strategy.
Yeah. So given that, we have to talk about its capability. We've seen before that these FP1 pack quite the punch. We've seen them take out SAM systems, helicopters.
And the success rate we're seeing in this latest footage seems exceptionally high. And one of the reasons, based on what we're seeing, is that they just seem very difficult to detect.
Low radar signature, maybe. Flying low.
Probably a combination of both. They seem to be exploiting gaps in the established air defense networks.
But that does raise a question. If they're this effective, and we see them hitting targets all over Crimea, the Donbass, shouldn't we be seeing more interceptions from the Russian side?
You'd think so. The fact that we have almost no footage of successful intercepts suggests that the window, the time from detection to impact is either just too short,
or the systems just aren't set up to handle this kind of threat.
It's a classic asymmetric advantage. Now, we do have to add the disclaimer. We can't always confirm 100% destruction without, say, a spotter drone.
Of course.
But based on the direct hits we see and the platform's track record, these are highly damaging strikes. At the very least, they're mission kills.
Okay, so the precedent is set, which brings us to the really fascinating part. The target selection. If you're running one of these C-8 missions, you're trying to blind the enemy. How successful were they at taking out the eyes of the Russian air defense network?
They went straight for the optic nerve. It's much more effective to target the specialized radars than just the launchers. Once the radar's gone, the launcher is deaf and blind.
So let's break down the inventory of what got hit. Where do we start?
Okay, first up is the Caster 2E2 radar.
Caster 2E2.
Yep. Think of this one as the perimeter scout. It's a target acquisition system, so its job is to spot incoming threats early. The footage shows a direct hit right on the radar dish itself.
And how critical is a system like that?
For local coverage, it's crucial. It's got a detection range of about 55 kilometers, so taking out that dish basically blinds them to any low-flying threats in that entire sector.
Okay, so if the Caster is the scout, then the next target you mentioned, the Podlet K1.
Okay.
That sounds more important.
Oh, absolutely. This is where the strategic impact really gets amplified. We saw 2 separate hits on Podlet K1 radars.
And what's its specific job?
It's not a general-purpose radar. It is specifically designed to support and supplement the big ones, the S-300 and S-400 batteries.
Ah, okay. So this is a direct shot at their top-tier air defense.
Exactly. The Podlet gives the S-400 the low-altitude coverage and targeting data it needs to be fully effective. So hitting it is a direct attempt to cripple Russia's best air defense in Crimea.
So when a Podlet is hit, does that degrade the S-400's range? Or is it more about its ability to see certain kinds of threats?
That's a great question. It's less about its maximum range and more about its situational awareness. It's like taking away the special glasses an athlete needs to see in certain conditions. The S-400 can still fire, but it's operating with a massive blind spot against low-altitude threats.
And the footage gave us details on both of those strikes, right?
It did. The first one was really interesting. You could see the crew scampering away as the drone came in.
So they were caught in a vulnerable moment.
Yeah, looked like they were setting it up or just making it operational. The second one was even clearer, a direct hit right on the radar face. Total functional destruction.
Taking out 2 of those systems seems like a huge win. How quickly can Russia replace something that's specialized?
Well, that's the vulnerability they're exploiting. A Podlet K1 isn't something you have sitting in a warehouse. They're expensive, they take time to build, and they require skilled crews to deploy. Every one of these hits imposes a huge logistical and financial burden.
And it wasn't just the SAM support systems, right? There were other surveillance assets hit.
We did see that. There was a strike on an unspecified antenna inside one of those white radio-transparent domes.
Could be anything, really.
Yeah.
Comms, another radar.
Exactly, but the fire burning at the dome tells you whatever was inside is gone. And then there was the strike on the aviation navigation radar.
Now that sounds more like civilian air traffic control. Why hit that?
It is, essentially. It's used for tracking aircraft movements around air bases, but destroying it still creates a huge disruption for Russian air activity.
How so?
Well, pilots rely on that for safe takeoffs, landings, coordinating local flights. Without it, everything slows down. It complicates sorties, reduces efficiency, and just generally makes operating from that airbase a lot harder.
So the strategy is about denial and disruption, not just destruction.
Hmm?
Okay, but they didn't just go after the infrastructure. They also went after the high-cost assets. Which brings us to the Orion UAV drone.
Yes, and this is just a textbook example of asymmetric warfare. The Orion is a really high-value system. You're talking about something that costs around $5 million a pop.
$5 million. And how does that compare to something we might be more familiar with, like the Bayraktar?
It's very comparable. It's a large reconnaissance and strike drone. It actually has a slightly heavier payload and can carry small S-8000 cruise missiles.
So it's not just an eye in the sky. It can strike targets itself.
Exactly. And the analysis confirms this one was completely destroyed. The footage shows it's seen in pieces. Hitting a $5 million asset with a relatively cheap FP1 drone, that's a massive financial and operational victory.
And losing those high-end recon platforms has to hurt their ability to plan future operations.
It absolutely does. It forces them to rely on less capable, maybe less persistent ways of gathering intelligence, which degrades their whole operational picture.
Okay, so moving from radars and drones, the source material really focused on what are called the main target of the video, the Su-24 bomber.
Right. And this was the second Russian aircraft destroyed by an FP-1 that week, apparently. A MiG-29 had been hit the day before. It just shows this continued vulnerability of aircraft on the ground.
And the Su-24 is still a significant asset for them.
Very much so. While they tend to use the newer Su-30s and Su-34s for things like glide bomb attacks, the Su-24 is still a workhorse. They have a lot of them. I think the numbers are around 260 with the Air Force and another 40 or so with the Navy.
So losing one isn't crippling, but what's the strategic message of hitting a plane on its own airfield?
It forces Russia to divert huge resources to protecting assets that should be safe, deep behind the lines. It signals a failure in their layered air defense. The sources note that 14 Su-24s have been destroyed so far.
And ironically, Ukraine uses that same type of plane to launch Storm Shadow missiles.
They do. So taking one out, as the video shows it hit on its side, just confirms that these operational bases are still very high-risk zones for Russia.
And that risk goes all the way down the chain to logistics. Tell us about the strike on that Euro truck at the goods yard.
Yeah, this one shows how dynamic and opportunistic the targeting is. This truck wasn't just driving down a road, it was hit while it was actively unloading a supply train.
So they hit a critical transfer point.
A critical node, exactly. Hitting a truck might not sound as impressive as a $5 million drone,
Wow.
but destroying it during the unloading process creates an immediate logistical bottleneck. It just gums up the whole works.
And the analysis confirmed this was a military-related convoy.
Correct. They pointed out that other military vehicles, Kamikaze trucks, were nearby. So this wasn't random. It was a deliberate strike aimed at disrupting the flow of material right when it was most vulnerable.
So let's pull all this together. When you look at this diverse collection of targets, everything from the Caster radars and the Podlet S-400 support systems to logistics trains and that expensive Orion drone, what's the big picture? What's the unified strategy here?
I think the biggest takeaway is this really sophisticated, tiered strategy of cost imposition. They are hitting high-tech military assets to degrade Russia's ability to see what's coming.
Blinding them.
Right. And at the same time, they're hitting these expensive, hard-to-replace airframes and logistical choke points to inflict severe economic and operational pain.
The combination suggests a pretty deep confidence in the FP1 system.
It does. A confidence in its ability to get through defended airspace, and it points to a very effective intelligence cycle that's identifying these targets. They are forcing Russia to spend immense resources just protecting its own rear areas.
So it's a clear picture of successful operational degradation, all done with these relatively inexpensive ground launch systems.
And that they're now responsible for 60% of long-range strikes. It just shows how reliable and indispensable this system has become. It's fundamentally changing their deep strike capability.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you to consider. Given that the FP1, a relatively inexpensive drone, now accounts for 60% of these long-range strikes, what does this reliance tell us about the future of warfare? Are we witnessing the slow but inevitable eclipse of traditional multi-million-dollar air defense systems by mass-produced, low-cost drone platforms?
A fascinating and very difficult dilemma for military planners everywhere.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.